So feel free to like, share, subscribe. Chris is here to share. Consultant. Part of my duty to my clients is to be consistently responsive. And that includes finding people like Chris to have great conversations, because the more we converse, the better we will be at the end of the day. So it is my pleasure to introduce and have Chris come on for the conversation today and to talk to us about taking that quantum leap, that quantum shift. And we are speaking to what, 9.5 version of Chris. Take me through why that is.
So yeah, no, I'm a big believer in the concept that if we're not growing, we're dying, and because time goes by. And so I've just made a conscious effort throughout the majority of my career to be always in search of ways to grow. And so I hit a point maybe about 2 years ago. I left my safe, secure job at KPMG, and I did a bit of reverse engineering of what made me who I am, all the good things and all the warts that go along with it. And I started to realize that I've made 6 or 7 at that point quantum leaps in my life. And so I said, well, hey, I'm Chris Spurvey 7.0. And so ever since then, I've been sort of observing the progression, and I've been adding it all up. And so I jokingly call myself Chris Spurvey 9.5 now. So it's really just all around, creating a better version of myself.
And moving forward, not being afraid of the pivot. Sometimes
Yeah.
what holds us still will ultimately sink us. Tell me about intentional networking. You talk a lot about that. I want to know a little bit more about putting that intention into the networking.
Yeah, great question. I guess I have a fundamental belief. I forget who said it. I think it's Einstein says that we are here for one reason only, and that is to be of service to our fellow human beings. And if we focus on just being of service to fellow human beings and bringing our strengths to the table, then we will grow, right? And so intentional networking is all around connection, connecting with people at a human to human level. And I do believe personally in bringing your strengths to those conversations. And so I guess when you get into those conversations, having a genuine conversation around what, and trying to define, is there any problems here that we can solve or I can solve? And so that to me is intentional networking. And it's not, I want to make sure I'm very clear. It's not around the outcome of selling something. It's just around the outcome, the intention of connection, genuine, authentic, deep down connection, where you create a bond, an emotional connection. And who knows where that can take us. I have a philosophy myself, is that we're always, at any given point in time, if you're down and out, we are one conversation away from a breakthrough, because we have no idea where that conversation, that network, that ability to network can take us. So that to me is all around intentional networking.
I've stolen that, just so you know, Chris. I've used that many times now, that one away. Our business manager says that hope isn't a strategy. And, and to me, networking is a strategy that works. You bring to mind that thought process of, we are only looking at the growth of ourselves in an infinite measure versus a finite measure. So in looking at Chris Spurvey 9.5, Chris Spurvey has constantly evolved, and the businesses that you create evolve with that. And that is that intentional growth of self. Take me through the process of, and I'm going to get to the elephant, by the way. Take me through that process of understanding that confidence within yourself, to see that the growth happens within, and then the business will grow as a result.
Well, maybe I'll share with you that I have tried to distill everything I've read and learned, both through trial and error, down to a very distinct 4-step process to create a quantum leap. And I'll come right to your question in a second. But the first step is, we need to have an aiming point. We need to have a vision of where we want to go. So that's step number 1. The second step is relentless pursuit of that vision, of that goal. The third step is where I think, what you're asking comes into play. It's mind work. And the biggest critic in all of our own individual lives is the 6 inches between our ears. It's the self-critic. The most important coach in our lives is not an external coach, it's the coach in our brain. And because we are going through this book, we are constantly talking to ourselves. And so, and I guess no matter what your external circumstances are, they are a direct reflection of what's happening inside. And so we need to take deliberate action to make sure we have that self-coach inside of us working for us versus working against us. And the unfortunate thing about it is many of us, including me in certain aspects of my life, we get to a point where the majority of the inputs that have created the self-coach, they're all come from childhood. We have a money blueprint that is a certain thing because of the way our parents taught us money habits. And lo and behold, you can scale that right back to the Great Depression, which, you really got to say to yourself, my God, I'm wired. I am pretty darn badly wired. And so in certain aspects of our lives, so we gotta take deliberate action to change that, to change those limiting beliefs. Analogy of pushing a car up a hill comes to mind, right? If we are if we're going after our goal deliberately, and then the self-doubt kicks in, the inner critic, we can lose days self-absorbed in the self-doubt. And in the same way a car will roll you over if you're only halfway up the hill, we got to every day do something to move us towards the goal. And that's how we create momentum, and we get through over the inertia that is can so easily rob us of our dreams and our goals early in the process, And let's be clear, nothing looks great in the middle when you think about it, right? You walk into an operating room in the middle of an operation, it looks like a murder has taken place. So you got to be able to see the ending from the beginning, and that's so hard, but that's the stuff that we got to get over in order to create this consistent growth in our lives.
I think you have answered that question, Chris, simply by going through that 4-step process of taking the aim and making it an intention every day to get up. Because at the end of the day, we're grappling with ourselves first.
Yes.
It's not, I heard the example, right? If your competitor goes out of business, you didn't win. That is a win by default, right? So what makes you win? What makes your ability to lead those teams, build that culture, and have people go forward? I think you said it really nicely in the book. It's the one antidote that really sticks with me is, why did an elephant allow itself to be captive?
Captive, yeah. Yeah, I mean,
Can you take us through that antidote? Because I thought that was really, really powerful in the book.
Yeah. And maybe before I go there, I'll round out the 4 steps, because I only got to step 3. In the 4th step is tracking. A goal that's not tracked, we never know at any given point in time how close we are to achieving the goal, how far away it is, what's working, what's not. So I'm a deliberate tracker, and so you got to track. In the same way, a hockey game is meaningless unless there's a scoreboard. Without tracking, we really don't know where we are. But
a good friend of ours said, Marnie, she said yesterday, Murray will remember this, without tracking or an ability to measure, it's just an opinion.
Yeah, right. Absolutely. It's subjective, right? Yeah. But the idea of an elephant is a symbol in my life that I try to keep front and center, because it's really a symbol of the significance of conditioning in all of our lives, right? And so an elephant is born into this world, grows into be multiple tons, perhaps the most powerful physical animal in the world. And a portion of those animals, elephants, find their way into an environment where they have a master, and that master ties a big gigantic chain around its ankle. And anytime the elephant tries to move in a way that it's not supposed to, the chain grips. And so the master of the elephant knows it's conditioned the elephant when it takes off the chain and it stops moving. And so all they have to do then is tie a small little piece of rope around. That's why you see in some circuses small pieces of rope around the ankle of an elephant, and it's because just the feeling of the rope in the brain is conditioned to believe it can't do anything. But so little does the elephant know that it can barge right through the door of any stadium or any circus. So that symbol for me, it's all around the idea that we got to be challenging ourselves, challenging our past programming and conditioning. And the reality of it is everything is a story in our lives. It's the story we make up. It's the creative interpretations of the events. And I mean, that brings to a point to, really there's two sides of every story, and we get to choose what side of the story we want to focus on, and every positive, in the same way, every positive can be looked at as a negative. A negative can be looked at as a positive. I'm going to grab a book. 1 second. I'll ask this question here. Is there any writing on the cover of this book? Or is there anything on the cover of this book?
Yes.
Yes. Yeah. You know what? I don't think, no, there's not. I'm looking at this side of the book. You're looking at this side of the book, right? And so it's all around, life is all around perception, and what do we perceive as real. And so anyway, I'm sharing all this, and I don't want to sit here saying I'm an expert at this. This is the stuff that I'm learning and I'm trying to apply to my life. And all that I'm suggesting is these are the things that we should all be thinking about and trying to apply in our lives, in everyone's life.
Well, and I appreciate the narrative. When I started the book, even though you had warned me, I wasn't quite expecting it to be the story that it was, and it's very, very engaging. But I think you hit on it right away when the main character in the book goes into a seminar, and it's time to sell, right? That's the seminar. And everybody puts up their hand when the person at the front of the room says, how many people here are looking to increase their revenue? All hands go up. And he says, no. And then we get into 4 main classifications. By the time we get to the end of the book, we're not motivated by money. Take me through the four motivators there.
You're talking about the multiple aspects of life, health, and so on. Yeah, I mean, so what I came to learn, and so the book is a narrative, and I chose to write it as a narrative because at multiple times in my life, when I was looking at the things that I wanted to accomplish, but I wasn't accomplishing them, I picked up a couple of books, and they were narratives. And the reason I fell in love with the narrative format, because a narrative format can change the image on the screen of our minds. And it's the images that are on the screen of our minds that ultimately motivate us to take action. Okay. Now, so I was at a point in my life, based on the programming of my childhood, where money was the predominant thought in my life. The acquisition of money, but not for the right reasons. It was because my mother wanted me to be a doctor. And the reason she wanted me to be a doctor was because I had a cousin who was a doctor, and doctor represented money, doctor represented a cottage, doctor represented all of this stuff. So it was all external motive reasons to become a doctor. Okay. So that got me to a point in my life where I got to admit I was miserable. And not only was I miserable, I was making lots of money, but I owed more money than I was making. And so I just realized, there's something wrong here. And so I formed a vision in my life, which included the multidimensional aspects of my life: my health, my family, freedom, fulfillment, and so on. And I created that vision. And I would start reading that vision. And so slowly but surely, there's only 2 ways to change. One way to change is through emotional impact. You have a heart attack, so you decide to change what's in the fridge. Or you have spaced repetition. And so this is why, for me, if you had to ask me what's my number 1 word, it's vision. Because vision it forms the images on the screen of our mind of who we are. And it's by changing the picture on the screen of our mind of who we are, we then attract into our lives the circumstances and the results that we're looking to get. So I had this form of vision that was multidimensional, and I just happened to notice that as I formed that vision, I started to change my actions and started to change my results. So, but I don't, I have a mentor, Price Pritchett, and one of the things he had me do when I met him face to face last November, last November 2019, he had me write my memoir, and which was really something that was perhaps going to be read at my funeral. And did I want my memoir to be Chris Spurvey is Scrooge, focused on money all the time, or do I want Chris Spurvey to be somebody who cares for his family, cares for his mom and dad, and he's doing those things because those are the things he really wants to be and do at his core, right? And so I think for me, and I think for all of us, we're likely more attracted by scenario B than scenario A. Does that make sense?
Anthea, exactly. And Anthea says, she says, Jim Quick says, crush the ants, automatic negative thoughts. How do you do that, Anthea? And I mean, you have been tested these last couple of years with this startup. How do you do that?
Well, I think as Chris is saying, it takes a great deal of intentionality. A close monitoring eye on your own mental chatter is absolutely step one. You can't amend something you're not aware of. And then just being really careful to, somebody said to me a while ago, the brain is super interesting because thoughts naturally happen, but you can also control them. So when that moment comes, then to step in and enforce the new rhetoric, which is, no, that's not true. That's not based on reality. I can look around me. I can see that negative thought is something I'm creating. As Chris says, I'm looking at the wrong side of the book, and imagine what the other person is saying on the other side of the book before you make that conclusion. And practice, so much practice.
Yeah. Well, that's where, so in the mind work, I mean, underneath these 4 pillars of creating a quantum leap, there's so much depth to them that we won't have time to touch on, but I will share this with you. I've established multiple routines in my day, 2 routines primarily, that get me focused on the intention. And perhaps the most important one is my morning routine, which is a 12-minute routine where I break out my journal and I read the vision, right? I read the vision and I look at pictures, and you've all heard of vision boards, right? But I look at pictures that represent my vision. And what I do is I take a few minutes and I trace around the edges of the pictures. And I've been doing this now 6 or 7 years. I'm here looking at my journal. I've been doing this 6 or 7 years, and I've found that the more I practice the exercise, as you can see, I'm a Leaf fan. I'll just put a little plug in there. The more I practice this exercise, the more I can actually I can picture, I can feel it, I can smell it, I can hear it. And I am, for those 12 minutes, living in that little chair with the umbrella over my head, feeling the heat of the southern sun. And what happens for me is, as I do this more and more, ideas start to percolate that will drive me towards the vision. So I then, in turn, write in my journal these ideas. And I think it's very important to note that if we don't write ideas down, they're like slippery fish. If we don't write our ideas down, they're going to swim away, and someone else is going to grab them and take advantage of them. So I write down my ideas as a part of this morning ritual. And so it's all about intention. It's all about, for a moment in time, picturing yourself, feeling yourself in the vision. And then lastly, I'll just mention very quickly my evening ritual, which is a simple evaluation of my day. What are the things that I did today to move me towards my aiming point? I write down the wins. I write down the things that didn't go so well. And all I do, it's a consistent, the 80-20 rule. I don't know if you've ever heard of that, but 20% of our efforts generate 80% of our results. And we can be very successful if we just every day try to do a little bit more of the 20% that generates 80% of our results. But again, going to tracking, if we don't write down what's working well, we're going to be in a very reactive state every day. So anyway, hopefully that helps.
That does help. I went to see a speaker a few years ago, the awesome guy, the guy who wrote all the awesome books
Yes.
and had the clever idea of calling them awesome, which of course you want to pick that up. But I started his Two Roses, a Thorn and a Bud as a means of keeping up with my kids' days. So I started it, we sat at the table and everybody thought it was hokey. Now I'm going back, I believe almost 5 years now. And my youngest son, who's 15 and in that angsty stage, still comes every night. And we do our Two Roses, a Thorn, and a Bud. And it is a great way of looking at those wins of the day. What is your one thorn you need to work on for tomorrow? And how are you going to look forward to tomorrow? And I've used it personally I've never articulated it the way you have, and fantastic, I'm stealing that too. But looking at the other side of that book, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I know Shelley calls it a victory journal. That's
victory
amazing.
Three. So take me through that, Shelley. How long have you been doing that? Your 3 wins every night, big or small?
I've done it on and off for years. When I was in university, I had some health issues. And, sometimes you need to focus on what's positive when things are not looking so bright. And so, it's fallen off sometimes and then come back. And now actually my daughter Cassandra reminds me periodically, are you using your victory journal? I think it's time.
My wife does the exact same thing.
All of her life, use that. And, I have found it a really good way of not just celebrating the big wins, because, you're in business, you get some of those great happenings and those are wonderful. But sometimes a reminder to smell the flowers, right? That little moments in your life can brighten your day. Like this weekend, we did that, right? I live in this office now. So little things to bring light where you might feel like a little bit of a mushroom. Close curtains because of sun, glare on screens and things like that. So little things to help you. Some days I love my dog,
Yeah.
Some days are real stretches, but I find it helps me counteract those critical voices from my childhood that still sit on my shoulder, despite my, constant attempts to smack them off. And they sneak in when you least expect them, right? You think things are going well, and then all of a sudden, wham, it goes. Sorry, I didn't mean to go into the microphone, but that process of overcoming it and going, no, I'm on a good path. I'm doing what I need to do. But we all, especially in days like this, need those reminders. And so I found them. It's funny because it's literally just gotten back on my bedstand. Sandra bought me a new one with the big words "happy" written across it.
Right.
So it's a helpful tool for sure.
Yeah,
I think so as well. Melanie was just saying that with their company, Benefits by Design, they had used the Two Roses, the Thorn, and a Bud as a team building exercise. One that my team went through just yesterday actually was the always, sometimes, and never of what we will or will not compromise or change within our business practice. And because as founders, we're so often, it's hard to make that difference between who we are as an individual and who we are within the business. So how do you work with somebody when you're working with somebody, Chris, and just get them into that mindset? How does that first step happen?
You're talking about the mindset of moving down a positive growth mindset?
Yes.
Yeah, that's a great question. I guess when I first so I do a lot of one-on-one coaching, and when I am engaged in that initial conversation with people, the majority of people have a difficulty articulating any degree of clarity around where they would like to go with their lives, right? And so I think first and foremost, it's about awareness. a ship without just like a person without a goal is like a ship without a rudder, you know? So the awareness of lack of clarity around where you want to go is the first step. But do that, but don't beat up yourself for that. Just awareness and a intention to correct it, you know? So what I then engage in is go down a process of establishing a vision, which is where you want to go. But I'll share this distinction with you, and it's a distinction that's come to realization since I've even written the book, because the book kind of comes around to the primary method to change your paradigm, which Shelley, just like for you and for me, it's the little voice on our shoulder that's holding us back. It's a paradigm, right? It's a collection of habits and thoughts and beliefs about ourselves that are embedded in our subconscious mind. So you correct that through the establishment of a vision. However, it's very hard to get up and be motivated every day to achieve the vision if you don't really feel a resonance around the process to get to it. So for me, most of the people that I help, it's in the area of sales, getting out there, getting customers, creating consistency of revenue. The problem with sales is the majority of us are not really wired to love sales, because we've all got stories in our history of the Electrolux vacuum cleaner salesman and the door-to-door salesmen, and it's icky. It just feels yucky, right? So we don't feel motivated to get out there and make it happen. So to bring it all around, what I do not only is the establishment of a vision that puts goosebumps on your neck because you're so excited about making it happen, but let's find a process, a roadmap that you're going to feel good about getting up every day. So rudimentary example, do you think you could talk to 2 people in the morning and 2 people in the afternoon, have a genuine high intention conversation with them about it, about themselves, right? Let's just switch this around. Sales is not about trying to get people to do something they don't want to do. It's just about having a conversation around a potential problem that they may or may not have, right? And so when you reframe the sales process and you set some parameters around, can you get excited about talking to 2 people in the morning and 2 people in the afternoon? All of a sudden, you start to fall in love with the process. And when you fall in love with the process, you become what I call Mach 2 with your hair on fire, which is just, you're going after it and you're excited about it, and you got no other choice, but you're gonna achieve your goals. So Lori, hopefully that answers your question, but that's the process I walk people through.
Does.
Yeah.
And I think, I know so many in the room here, and I know that they are Mach 2 with their hair on fire because they love having great conversation, and I like stealing all their stories. Go ahead, Anthea.
So I was actually listening to a neuroscientist this morning, Dr. Andrew Huberman, talking about how to make changes. And basically his advice was to find ways to enjoy the steps through the process.
Absolutely.
Because your brain is wired to release dopamine at certain signals, and you can train it in order to very much like a process by learning to enjoy the micro steps that you take in order to get there. So interesting reinforcement of the same message I heard this morning.
Yeah, nailed it. And maybe if you don't mind, Lori, because I think maybe some of you may be concluding that, oh yeah, this is the law of attraction. This is everything we read about in The Secret. The one thing about, or we heard about in The Secret, the one thing that I've learned most recently, and it goes back, I probably should have known about it earlier, but we're actually hardwired. Like, this is not just about hairy-fairy metaphysical stuff. There's a science side to this as well. Not only a spiritual side, but there's a science side. And in our brains, and I don't know all the details of this, but there's this thing called the reticular activating system. And the reticular activating system is really, it's the fight or flight. It looks for the things that we value. It looks for the things that we fear. So when you form a vision, when you pick your aiming point, what your reticular activating system does is you all of a sudden start noticing things that you didn't notice before. Because the reality of it is all energy is already here. So the reticular activating system is the part of our brain that is wired to truly bring into our consciousness the mixture all the ingredients to help us achieve that. And the most rudimentary example of the RAS, I think I might have said this to you, Lori, about 6 months ago. I bought a new Toyota 4Runner, a white one, and I went down the Kenmount Road, and I with my wife in her little car, and she dropped me off. I walked in, got in my new nice shiny new limited edition Toyota 4Runner, felt all proud. In the 5 minutes it took me to drive home, I saw 4 white Toyota 4Runners, and I didn't feel that important anymore. But the reality of it is those white Toyota 4Runners were there prior. I just didn't notice them, but because I have a white Toyota 4Runner, I noticed them. So that's the key, right? So all this stuff that I've mentioned about the ritual, the morning ritual, the visualization, it's all in an effort to keep our conscious mind and our subconscious mind focused on the goal and focused on the ability to see things in our lives that if we grab them and do them effectively, then we'll actually achieve it, right? The key is to stay focused on the goal. I think many times a big part of our problem is we pick a goal, we forget about the goal, or we change the goal even slightly. I remember hearing this story of a guy who went to a restaurant and he ordered chicken soup. And then after 5 minutes of placing the order, he stood up and flagged down the waiter and changed his order to wonton soup. And then 5 minutes later, he changed his order to beef soup. And then he got up and left the restaurant because he was peeved off because his soup was late. But the reason his soup was late because he kept changing his mind, right? So we got to pick a goal and stay focused on the goal.
Timing is everything. How many people in the room have heard something, spoken to somebody, and they said something just the right way at just the right time, which is what we're doing here today. And you go, yeah, I get it. And you start implementing it. And then you go home and you share with people and they go, did I not tell you that like 5 years ago and been telling you that 4 years ago, 3 years ago, but suddenly you hear it from Chris Spurvey and it's law.
Yeah, well, we change, right? I mean, and stuff it goes back to the book, the showing the front, that we see things differently. I read a quote one time that if you read a good book a second time, you don't see something in the book that wasn't there before. You see something in yourself that wasn't there before. Yeah. And because you read it, you grow, you read it again, you see something different.
I like the way Shelley had said, so many half-built bridges, right? And we have to make a conscious effort to build that bridge. I thank everybody for coming in. I hope that you'll come back next week.